In today's episode, we will discuss the innovative family coaster that brought new life to Fantasyland at the Magic Kingdom. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and I am joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Haley Grace.
And thank you so much for everybody for tuning in to episode 3 of the podcast. We've been doing this for a month now.
Yay!
Yay! That's crazy. Even though it's only 3 episodes, I guess.
It's been fun, though.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of fun doing it. So
it's crazy how time flies, though. I feel like
the months just fly by. So, like we were talking when we first recorded episode 1, how it was like 6 weeks until we went to King's Dominion, and now when this episode comes out, we will be leaving for our trip the day after this episode comes out.
Oh my gosh,
that's really exciting. So it's gonna be fun.
I'm really excited.
I'm excited.
It's not even King's Dominion. It's King's Dominion
and King's Island, which neither of us have been to either park, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So, one thing for you listeners that Haley and I have been talking about, we'll probably be doing some bonus episodes of just trip reports. So, if you're interested in hearing our opinions and our experiences at these parks as we go to them, we will be recording some trip reports, and I'll make sure when I upload those episodes, I'll mark them differently so that you can tell the difference between the regular podcast episodes and the ones that are just trip reports from our experiences at the park. So
yeah, absolutely. I think it should be a fun, different dynamic for us with having a general public eye, but also having a roller coaster junkie eye as well. I don't know. I think it should be interesting. I don't think a lot of podcasts out there are going to have information where it's both. So anyways, spread the word if you guys are interested, because we love you and we're excited to keep growing this podcast and our listeners. So
yeah, it should be exciting. So we're doing King's Dominion and King's Island in the coming weeks, and then later this year we'll be going to Cedar Point for the first time, as well as going to Hershey Park for our second time. Well, my second time, and Haley's been there several times.
Yep.
And then we will be going to probably Worlds of Fun in Silver Dollar City at some point over the summer. And then definitely we will be going to the topic of today's podcast. We will be going to Disney World at the end of the year. So we'll get the chance to ride Cosmic Rewind for the first time while we're down there. So that'll be exciting. Speaking of, I saw some first reports on people that got to ride Cosmic Rewind for the first time this week.
Do I want to know?
I won't spoil. I really haven't looked into too much because I don't want to spoil it. But one funny thing I did see was, so I guess the ride features a backwards launch. I think you knew that already.
That's insane.
And I guess it's at the beginning of the ride.
So like Rock and Roller Coaster, but backwards.
I guess so. I doubt it's that intense, but I don't know the statistics on the launch. I just know it's a backwards launch. But it also features spinning cars. And so, like, the cars are meant to spin to kind of, like, face you towards the show scenes and different things like that. Mm-hmm. But I guess one person that wrote it, they went through the backwards launch, and then their car never spun through the whole ride. So they just rolled the whole thing backwards. And they said it was so nauseating. So,
well, yeah.
Yeah. So they're still working out the kinks, obviously. And they let them ride again, which,
that's good. Disney's pretty good about that kind of stuff. So
well, and that's why they do these previews so that they can, work out all the bugs before official opening day. So
it's true. So, fun fact, there's 224 days left till we go to Disney.
Oh, boy. Now you just told well, I guess they don't know what day we're recording this podcast. So they don't know what day we're going to be there.
That's true. I don't think we know the day that we're recording that podcast.
What day? Like what day this podcast will be released?
Yeah,
I do, but you might not. So,
okay.
So,
anyways,
Yeah, so as I mentioned last week, we're going to be talking about a Walt Disney World coaster today. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, we do deep dives into the history of individual roller coasters. I'm a roller coaster enthusiast, so this is a hobby of mine. I spend lots of time looking at the history of these coasters and learning about them, while my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public. So she enjoys roller coasters, she rides them with me, but she doesn't know things about them as much as I do.
It's true.
So you're getting there, though. As we go through these episodes, you're learning more and more.
There are things that I've definitely learned during this podcast, so I think it's definitely interesting. And I love that you get to share your little nerdy, geeky, roller coaster junkie fun facts with me, and especially the history. I think it makes me appreciate the rides a lot more. So yeah.
It's going to be hard when we're at the parks, because some of these things I already because like some of these things I already know about, but I'm going to have to like keep it to myself so that I don't spoil a future episode that you and I can
really
record.
Hard for you.
Know.
That's going to be really hard for you, because you always are telling me fun facts.
I can probably tell you little things here and there, but I'll have to keep the majority, to myself so that I don't spoil too much for future episodes.
Well, I think especially too, because we're having our really good friends Pam and Cody go with us to King's Dominion one of the days, but then we're also having my cousin and her husband go with us to King's Island. So it's going to be even harder, because I feel like all you're going to want to do is share those facts with them. But
well, I try not to do it with other people because I don't like to scare them away, but I know I can't scare you away, so.
I'm stuck.
You're stuck with me. Even though this is
true.
Yeah.
That's not true. I love you.
So. Oh, I love you too. So, all right. So let's jump into today's topic. We are going to be talking about the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. So
I don't think I've ever seen. Did you do that, or was that a picture that you found?
Oh, this is the logo that hangs above the ride.
It just looks different.
Yeah, that's the logo that hangs, the sign that hangs above the ride entrance. So, but yeah. So this will be the newest coaster that we've talked about so far. We talked about two 90s coasters the past couple of weeks, and now we're jumping to a 21st century coaster. Not only that, but a 2010s, decade coaster. So
yeah.
So this will be fun.
I love this ride.
Now, Disney is, like we said, a big part of our family.
It's true.
It's the first, other than Silver Dollar City, it's the first like major theme park, amusement park that I remember going to. And
it's even the first one that we've been to together.
Mm-hmm, that's true. So yeah, it's always been a big part of our family. I would say that was probably the park where I started riding major coasters. My first adult coaster was probably Rock and Roller Coaster. And, and it's...
Really? Not even Space Mountain?
Well, I don't know. You could classify Space Mountain as a family coaster, where...
I thought it was pretty intense. Yeah.
It doesn't even go... What's the top speed? Like 30 miles an hour?
You just don't realize it because it's all like dark.
Yeah.
So,
like, I love Space Mountain, don't get me wrong, but it's not like super intense, and so I wasn't scared to go on Space Mountain when we went to Disney World for the first time, or Big Thunder Mountain. I'm trying to remember what else was there at that time. I guess that was pretty much... Well, Everest was there. I did not ride Everest the first time we went. Probably the one thing that's nice about Rock and Roller Coaster is you don't see it from the path. So that's how, like, they got me in line, and then I didn't see any of the coaster until you're at the front of the line, and you're like, well, I can't go back now.
You don't want to look like that wimp that jumps off the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. So, anyway, but yeah, so I rode it, and I actually enjoyed it, and I don't know why Rock and Roller Coaster didn't convince me to start riding bigger coasters. I don't know. Maybe I figured a launch I could handle, but I was worried about drops. I think that's probably what it was.
Which is funny because, it technically has drops. You just can't tell.
Yeah, they're not super big, though. Like, if you look at the layout, it's mostly just inversions and bank turns. There's not, like, a huge, drop. Like in, Everest, I think that's what made me nervous about riding Everest. So, but, yeah, I really enjoy the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I got to experience it for the first time. I don't remember what year it was, but it was within the first year or two after it opened. And
I thought we rode it together for the first time when we went.
That's the first time you rode it. I had been to Disney since the new Fantasyland expansion before that. So that was my second time riding, like my second trip since it had been built when you and I went. So
I don't know why I thought that it was the first time.
Slinky Dog Dash I had rode for the first time when you and I went. Maybe that's what
I'm confusing it with. So,
but yeah,
which that's a fun ride too.
The one thing I will say about Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is it is like 10 times more fun if you ride in the back row. Because of how long the trains are, and because it is like a pretty low speed family coaster. If you sit in the front, you kind of just feel like you're getting pushed along the track.
Yeah.
It's still fun, but in the back you actually get some airtime as the weight of the train flings you over some of the hills. And so I enjoy it a lot more in the back row. So
I do too. So it's a completely different ride, honestly.
It really is between the two. So. The coaster is one of the most popular attractions in the park. Average wait time is 80 minutes. So, which, sounds about right. It's
long line.
It's pretty much, it's not always, but definitely one of the top 2 or 3 lines in Magic Kingdom at any given time. Now, the ride didn't get nominated for any Golden Ticket Awards or anything like that, which, interestingly enough, Disney roller coasters almost never get Golden Ticket nominations. Like, Disney kind of gets snubbed from the Golden Ticket Awards.
You're too good for us.
So the exception is Disney's dark rides. Like, Golden Ticket Awards have been given for Rise of Resistance and Tower of Terror. So stuff like that Disney gets a lot of credit for that. But as far as the coasters go, they don't really get a lot of credit in that department.
I think it's really interesting that Rise of I don't know, is still considered a dark ride because it's pretty intense. Like, I know
Rise of the Resistance?
Or whatever you just said. Like,
yeah, Rise of the Resistance and Tower of Terror.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, dark ride's just any ride that's indoors.
I guess that's true.
And they classify that as basically anything other than roller coasters that are indoors. So
it's such a cool ride.
It is very cool. It was awesome.
Too bad we can't talk about that on here. Maybe we'll have a little fun one on the history of that one day or something. So maybe
so. So there's not a lot of history right now. It's so new.
Yeah.
So in the CoasterBot rankings, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ranks number 244. It's a lot lower than I thought it would be, but this is a ranking from Coaster Enthusiasts, and it's a family coaster. So
definitely a family coaster.
Yeah. So it puts it below coasters such as Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland, New Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and Thunderation at Silver Dollar City. It ranks ahead of coasters such as Flying Turns at Knoebels, Backlot Stunt Coaster at King's Dominion, and Dragon Flyer at Dollywood. It currently ranks 6 out of the 7 coasters at Walt Disney World. So Expedition Everest is number 1, ranked number 95. Rock and Roller Coaster at 123. Space Mountain 182. Big Thunder Mountain at 203. Slinky Dog Dash is just ahead of it at 236. And then at the bottom is Barnstormer, which, basically a kiddie coaster. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So as far as what you would rank, like, what would be your number 1 coaster at Disney World?
Oh. Man, I'm not sure. I guess the one that I love going on over and over again is Mount Everest, which is
Expedition Everest, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of hilarious because you're very opposite. You don't like it as much because you get a little bit sick.
Yeah, the backwards portion makes me a little nauseous, so I don't enjoy it as much as a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I'll still ride it. So, and I enjoy the forward. So after the backward section, that drop off of the mountain and that whole part of the ride afterwards, I really enjoy that part. But for some reason, that backward section gets me. I don't know if it's because it's in the dark and I can't see. I don't know if my brain just can't. I don't know. The motion sickness gets me every time, which is so strange considering all the other crazy rides
That's true, because there's things that I will not even get on, and I love Expedition Everest. But I will say that Seven Dwarfs is probably like a close second for me. Like,
wow, so you really enjoyed it. So.
Well, I think it's a special place in my heart. Like, as a general public, I probably put it in third behind, third or fourth behind Space Mountain or Thunder Mountain.
Oh, okay.
But personally,
yeah, because I know you personally don't love Rock and Roller Coaster because of the restraints.
Yeah.
So.
I guess that's true. I forgot about Rock and Roller Coaster, but I do. I love it, and I know it's hard to number all of them because they're all so different.
They are very different.
Not only that, but the experience of them too, like, is just all crazy. So I like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train because it's Snow White themed, and I have a special place in my heart for Snow White. But that's my personal opinion. So. Yeah.
So I personally rank it number 3 out of all the coasters at Disney, which a lot of people like. Again, it's pretty high for most coaster enthusiasts. Part of that is because, one, I don't like Expedition Everest as much as most people, so Everest is 4th on my list. I love Space Mountain is my number 1.
Okay.
A lot of that is because I just enjoy it. It's a fun ride, but also there's a lot of nostalgia there because I've been riding it for so long, so it gets a kind of a bonus in my book. Rock and Roller Coaster is my number 2, and then Seven Dwarfs is number 3, but again, like I said, it has to be in the back row.
Okay.
So a front row ride and a back row ride are totally different. So, but back row, I really enjoy it. So unfortunately, you can't really. I mean, if you can ask for back row, and sometimes they'll let you wait for it, but sometimes they're just trying to crank out as many people as possible.
It really depends on what time of the day you go.
Yeah.
Because if you go like right before the fireworks, like when everybody's in front of the castle, that's like the best time to go.
Yeah, it's fun at night too.
It is a lot of fun at night. So I think between that one and Splash Mountain, they're a lot of fun to go at night.
Yeah, Splash Mountain is fun at night because depending on the weather, but sometimes you'll get like no one that wants to go on Splash Mountain at night. Right. When I was on our first trip to Disney, we went through Splash Mountain. I think they let us ride it 3 times in a row without having to get off the ride, just because like no one was in line, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about the history of the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So we're going to go back to 1937. All right, so 1937. We're going to be all over the place today. I
was going to say 1937. This is like a pretty new ride.
I know, it's pretty crazy. We're jumping that far back, right? So we're going to be starting 1937 in Copenhagen, Denmark, of all places. So it's here in 1937 we find an amusement park by the name of Tivoli Gardens. Mm-hmm. So the park opened in 1843, which it's the 3rd oldest operating amusement park in the world. So it's been around forever. They currently operate 4 roller coasters. I think they're all wooden coasters. I don't think they have any steel coasters. I'm not super familiar with it, but I know the park has built several coasters over the course of the 179 years they were open. And one of these coasters was a unique model. I think the name is pronounced Babanen, something like that. I'm not from Denmark, so. But, so this was a really unique coaster. So it was a wooden bobsled coaster. But, most bobsled coasters only have like 3 or 4 trains. Or 3 or 4 cars. This thing is crazy. That's like 12, maybe 14 cars. I guess this was a powered ride too. So think like Fire in the Hole at Solar City, the beginning of it, where it just kind of pushes you along.
Okay.
So some people would say this may not classify as a roller coaster because it's powered. I don't know if there were sections of the ride that were affected by gravity. This is literally the only picture I can find of it. So
it's cool that you even found one, period.
Yeah, it was only open for 1 year. And this is, like I said, literally the only picture I can find of it. But the reason I bring it up is because if you look closely at this picture, you can see that there's kind of like these little supports that connect to a swivel kind of at the top above your head on each side of the car. So as you're going through this, it would swing back and forth as you're going through this section. So,
I'm seeing the connection now.
Yeah. So
for those of you who have not been on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, the carts actually swing side to side, just a little bit, like not crazy. So anybody that feels like you would get motion sickness from that, you really can't tell unless you're going up the hill where they're singing.
Yeah.
They
purposely, I think, made the cars very heavy so that they don't just swing wildly out of control. It's just it's subtle enough that you notice it and it makes it more enjoyable, but it's not crazy to make it like super nauseating.
They're hard. They're hard to swing back and forth.
It's true. If you try to swing them back and forth, during the dark ride section of the ride, you really have to get all 4 people involved to make it happen.
That's very true. Mm-hmm.
So, but like I said, this ride was only open for a year, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. But this is still cool. This is the first coaster in recorded history that ever had a rocking car of any kind. So I thought I'd mention it as kind of the very roots of where Seven Dwarfs Mine Train
honestly,
comes from.
It's got to be one of the first roller coasters, period.
Well, if you think about it, Jackrabbit just hit its 100th anniversary, and that was built in... So if it hit its 100th anniversary, it was, 1921? So before this was built, there's others that were... I think there are even coasters built in the 1800s. So there are definitely some that are older than this one. But not many that are this old remaining nowadays, if that makes sense. So,
makes sense.
So we're going to leave 1937 and we're going to jump forward all the way to 1981. So at this point, we're back in the U.S. now. There's a company by the name of Aerodynamics, which I think you've heard me talk about them.
Yep.
So you're familiar with Thunderation. They built that. They also did a lot of Disney's early work. So they helped with Space Mountain. They helped with
I was going to say, that sounds like even a Disney term is the Aerodynamic.
Yep. So they were like the best coaster manufacturer in the industry for a long time, especially through like the 70s and 80s. So in 1981, they were developing this new coaster concept called the suspended coaster. And so this was the first model that they built. This was the Bat at Kings Island. That
thing is wild.
Isn't that cool? So
cool is a very interesting word.
Why would you make it makes you nervous? Why?
Okay, so just for you podcast listeners that are pretty new to our podcast, make sure that you go and look at the pictures too on our Instagram and Twitter page, so you understand what I'm talking about when I say that those are the closest I've ever seen, like, a vehicle get to the ground on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were super tall, it would just chop your feet off.
Well, your feet don't dangle from it.
It doesn't matter. That thing is scary.
So, they have it mapped out exactly to a science so that the cars wouldn't hit the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to get on it.
All right. Well, they still have one of these at Kings Island, so I don't know if you're going to ride that with me.
That close to the ground.
I don't. So, let's get into it for a second. So, this was the...
Sorry.
It makes sense. If you just let me finish the story, you'll understand why I got to finish the story to answer your question.
Okay.
So this ride was the first prototype, and people loved it. The problem was people love it.
What?
Yeah, it's a fun ride. I don't know.
Not that close to the ground. No, thank you.
Okay. GP says no, apparently, but most of the GP said yes. So.
Okay.
I think just Haley says no.
Sure.
Okay.
The rest of the ride looks cool.
It's just this one part where it's just a couple feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not going to hit the ground. They wouldn't open it if it hit the ground. Okay. It's made out of... It's not like it's going to stretch if you have a super tall person in the car, and your feet don't dangle. I don't know. Okay. So, Haley wouldn't have rode it, but whatever.
It's not even open now. See, it's speaking for itself.
Well, it's not open, not because of this. One of the things they didn't take into consideration in construction is they didn't bank the turns because they figured because the vehicles swing back and forth, they wouldn't need to bank the turns because the cars would do the banking for them. Oh. So it wouldn't put any extra stress on people. You know, there wouldn't be like tons of sideways, G's happening that would be rough on people's bodies. That's just what
they tell you, Nathan.
You are so critical of this coaster, and I have no idea why.
I don't know.
You haven't even rode it before.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
Haley says no. General public, I guess, says yes.
Well, yeah, people loved it, so okay. But it closes in 1983 because even though it wasn't putting stress on the people riding it, it was putting stress on the track because they didn't bank it. And so they were constantly maintaining the ride, constantly had issues. It was so bad that after the ride closed, Aerodynamics actually put in a new coaster for Kings Island completely free of cost. So after they tore this down, they built Vortex, which is a completely different type of ride. And they built Vortex completely for free.
Is that one still there?
No, unfortunately. They just tore that one down a couple years ago.
What a bummer.
Yeah, I wish I could have tried Vortex. But Aerodynamics does eventually get this model better, and they ended up building 9 more over the course of the, throughout the 80s and 90s.
Do those ones get us near to the ground?
I don't know. I didn't even think about that. That doesn't bother me because your feet aren't hanging out. So eventually Aerodynamics did come back and rebuild a new one of these for Kings Island. That's still there today. And it's also called the Bat, just like this one. But it's not the same. So I don't know if it comes close to the ground like this one does. But so we'll have the opportunity to ride 2 of them this year because there's the one at Kings Island and there's one at Cedar Point as well.
Okay.
So maybe you'll ride and maybe you won't. We'll see. So anyway, I bring this up because this also has the swinging
factor.
So the difference here is rather than swinging, in the mine carts, you're swinging, up above the track. You're swinging with underneath the track.
It's an interesting feeling, I feel like. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
So now we're going to just jump a couple years into the future. We're going to go to Australia now. So we're all over the place. So in Australia, there's a small amusement park there by the name of Scenic World. Now, in the 1880s through the mid-1940s, it was a coal and shale mine. And in the Jameson Valley in Katoomba, New South Wales, Australia. Okay? Mm-hmm. And in 1945, the mine closes. But they decide to keep... So they had an incline railway there that went down from the top of the mountain all the way down to the valley. And so rather than just closing everything down, they turned, the incline railway into the scenic railway and started selling tickets for it. Kind of like I know that there's some incline railways in Pittsburgh that we've...
Didn't we go on one?
Yeah, Duquesne, is that the one we went on?
The Duquesne
so
incline.
I actually brought that up because, so here's a picture of the scenic railway.
Oh, wow. Very, very similar looking.
Yeah, very...
to the one in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exact same concept. The difference is the Duquesne incline is 30 degrees. This one is 52 degrees. So I thought that was fascinating.
That is really fascinating.
So
you have to understand, those inclines, they're intense. I don't know.
Well,
they're not intense, but if you're afraid of heights,
they can be kind of freaky if you're afraid of heights.
They're definitely freaky because all you're doing is going super slow down a mountain at a weird angle.
They actually, you haven't done this, but I have. They actually have one of these at Silver Dollar City to get you to the cave. So the Marvel Cave that we haven't done before, they have one of these to get you down to the cave. So.
Okay, well, we have to.
Yeah, we'll have to do that one time. So.
Yeah, on our next trip or something. That'd be fun.
Yeah, so. Over the years, the park decided to add a couple other things to the park. I just want to show you this picture of where it's located.
Oh, how beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? So they add a bunch of...
And this is in Australia?
This is Australia, yep.
Bucket list.
Yeah, so they add a couple rides over the next several years. They add like a cableway and a skyway, so just to give you views like this, right?
Stunning.
Yeah, so it's absolutely gorgeous, and the park is still open. Lots of people go there just to see views like this. However, in 1984, they announced a thrill ride that they wanted to open in Scenic World, and it was going to be an in-house built roller coaster by the name Orphan Rocker, which is named after Orphan Rock, which I guess is a rock formation that's in this area. So Orphan Rocker. The steel coaster would run through the forests on top of the cliffs that overlook the valley. So I guess, like, if you're looking at this, I guess the park is kind of like up on the top of one of these cliffs, and then because you would enter the incline railway at the top and take it all the way down to the bottom, and then there's stuff at the bottom too. So the roller coaster was going to...
neat concept.
Isn't that interesting? So the coaster was going to be up on the top of the cliffs, though, not down here. Let's see. So the cars were mounted, and this is why I'm bringing this up. So first of all, here's some pictures of the coaster. First of all, I want to ask you what you think. Look at that picture right there and tell me what you think of that coaster track.
I mean, it's not an inversion, so it's definitely like a weird banking turn.
Does that look safe to you?
No. Was it safe?
No, we're gonna get into that. So you can see here's more of the track here. It doesn't look comfortable at all. Like, the transitions are just super weird.
I wonder how the train would even work on that.
Yeah. Well, probably we're gonna get into it, but this is why we're bringing this up. So the cars were mounted with suspension.
Let me just dump you out right there.
The cars were mounted with suspensions on each end and would rock back and forth.
No thanks.
It's the same concept as the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
I know, but I still in my head. I just can imagine going on that bank and it turning and
Yeah. This ride vehicle is not the problem. It's the track that's the problem. Because this concept of having rocking cars back and forth, not a bad idea.
I understand that, but banking into the turn, and then if the vehicle rocks, I just feel you would get dumped out.
Well, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train has bank turns as well.
Not like those.
Not like those. That's fair. So, but you're buckled in. You wouldn't fall out or anything, but it had severe issues for sure. So it was constructed completely in-house, and they kept advertising its opening day by Christmas. And however, in the 80s, Australia increased some of their amusement park standards and safety requirements, and this was while this was being constructed, and after the changes happened, the roller coaster was no longer up to par to meet those safety standards. So over the years, they tried, making changes, trying to improve. They would take pieces of track out, put other pieces in to try to make it better. The owners were claiming year after year that it would open, and to this day, it never did. So, is
it still
it is still there,
weird.
Just sitting there, rusting
Kinda
and
creepy.
rotting. Isn't that creepy? So, you can see here, there's a tree growing through the coaster track there.
Oh my
just
goodness.
Completely abandoned. And, it's at the front of the park. So, if you go to the park, you'll actually walk underneath some of the coaster to get to the entrance of all the other rides and stuff. And it's just sitting there completely abandoned. So
weird.
So, to this day, there are probably less than 50 people that ever rode it. Mostly just park employees and family members testing it. And yeah, but it had the same type of cars as the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but it never opened to the public. So
makes sense.
Kind of a fascinating story. And even that track there, it looks misaligned and bumpy. It does not look like a comfortable ride. So anyway, that's 1984 up through today. Now let's finally jump over to Magic Kingdom at Disney World. So around this time frame that Orphan Rocker is having all of its issues, Disney had been removing less popular attractions from the park. Most of them had been kind of in the Fantasyland area. So in 1994, they removed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But the rockwork in the lagoon stayed there just untouched for a decade. And so there have been tons of ideas floating around Imagineering and like what to do with that space.
Mm-hmm.
And in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Imagineers brought this idea of building a roller coaster that was themed to the Hi-Ho number from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And so they were excited about this idea. They took it to the higher-ups at the company, and they were told, no. They said, we should be focusing on new Disney properties, not old ones. So,
boy, did they get that wrong.
So the idea was officially put on a shelf, and eventually...
I wonder how many projects like that are put
It
on
is
a shelf.
interesting to think about how many potential projects are just sitting in Imagineering that have never happened.
Well,
I would love to just talk to somebody.
Go and just browse. Not even look through them, but just be like, oh, that sounds like a cool project.
Right?
Oh, that sounds like a really neat idea.
It's interesting to think, like, I'm sure Disney could fill 2 or 3 more parks worth of all the ideas that have just been scrapped over the years.
I mean, it's got to be in one of the vaults somewhere, like the Disney vaults.
Yeah, it is fascinating to think about that. So,
yep.
Cool. Yep, 2004, the park finally covers the old lagoon, and they put a Winnie the Pooh play area and character meet and greet there. Which I find hilarious that they were told to focus on new properties and put Winnie the Pooh there. That doesn't make any sense.
We love Winnie the Pooh.
I have no problem with Winnie the Pooh. I just don't understand that they said new properties and they're like, okay, well, what about Winnie the Pooh? That's not a new property. So,
I mean, when did they come out though? Not Winnie the Pooh, but when did the meet and greet come out?
2004 is when they covered up the lagoon.
So I mean, when did my friends Tigger and Pooh come out? Because that'd be something
I guess that's true. I'm kind of curious now. Because this
is my brain of being a mom of a 2-year-old. I'm like, well, maybe this is why. So Parker liked my friends Tigger and Pooh for a long time.
So they didn't release that till 2007. So I don't know what the thought process was there. So
Winnie the Pooh's always been kind of a fan favorite, though.
It is, and I mean it would because the ride is right across that spot right there. So I guess it was kind of just meant to be an extension of the ride, probably. So anyway, it makes sense. It fit in. It's just kind of interesting, like why Snow White was a no, but Winnie the Pooh was a yes.
Yeah, I can see that.
So around this time, Mickey's Toontown had also become less and less popular among the guests. And so this kind of whole section of Winnie the Pooh and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Toontown, Disney had kind of just, all that was kind of becoming outdated. And so Disney was making plans for the Magic Kingdom's largest expansion since it had opened in 1971. So at D23 in 2009, Disney announces New Fantasyland.
No.
So it was to feature several mini-lands, or neighborhoods as Disney called them. The original Fantasyland area would be the Castle Courtyard down here. And that would feature original attractions like the Carousel, Peter Pan's Flight, It's a Small World.
Let me just put this out there. Just talking about it.
You're like, I just want to go.
Let's just go.
Disney is absolutely Haley's favorite theme park to go to. So
I mean, not even just for the roller coasters, but the atmosphere and the food. Don't even get me started. No, if I get started,
just getting hungry. Just talking
not
about
only
this.
that, but if I get started, then seriously, we'll be talking about it all night long. So.
I mean, we could just talk about the food at Disney for a whole podcast episode. There's so much good stuff
so
there.
True.
So beyond the castle's gates would be a new area, the Enchanted Forest. That would include the Little Mermaid at the very top here, and then the Beauty and the Beast section over here, which included Gaston's Tavern, the Be Our Guest restaurant, and the Enchanted Tales with Belle attraction. So other improvements to the area were also planned, like a Tangled area to replace the defunct Skyway station, featuring beautifully decorated bathrooms.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me tell you. As a huge...
I knew this was going to... I left a pause in my script here to let you rant about the bathrooms.
Oh my gosh, those bathrooms. Okay. As a Tangled fan, why? Why would you do a beautifully decorated bathroom? Like, seriously, that's the last thing I think about when I think about Tangled the movie. Like,
so let me ask you this: would you rather have a Tangled bathroom section or just no Tangled section at all?
No, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. Well, because I think, I don't know, maybe just have like a meet and greet spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like the whole Winnie the Pooh thing. Or, I mean, they even have like a tiny Merida spot even. You know?
Over
like, it's just
kind of
like,
on the edges of, in between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, yeah.
Bathroom? A bathroom? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Well, because in Paris, the Disneyland in Paris, they have like, you know, they're putting in a Tangled section, which we're going. So
I don't know with what money, but someday.
Maybe if our podcast gets big enough. So
we're getting ambitious now.
I'm thinking big.
So. The Enchanted Forest area, which would be outside the castle walls, this kind of middle section here,
okay,
was to feature what Disney called interactive storybook adventures with your favorite Disney princesses. So, in addition to the Enchanted Tales with Belle, which is there, they also had plans where, so let me just read a couple of these. So, guests would also get to meet Cinderella in where you get to see her dress change from rags to a ball gown and then help her prepare for the royal ball. You would also be able to meet Sleeping Beauty in her home and help her celebrate her belated sweet 16th birthday by making her a card. So have you done the Enchanted, or the, what's it called? The Enchanted Tales with Belle. Have you done that before? I don't think we did that when we went.
I want to say I have, because when we went on our band trip.
What year was that? Do you know?
Now you're asking for.
Yeah, because they didn't announce this till 2009. I don't think Enchanted Tales with Belle opened till 2012, 13, somewhere in there.
I want to say we did it, but then again, we were teenagers, so I'm not.
You may not have.
Certain.
It's more for kids. It's a pretty cool experience if you haven't done it before. Basically, there's. You go in and they have one of their who are the staff members? I'm drawing the blank on the term they use. Cast member. Yeah. So they have a cast member that is. I just blanked on the term. I got there.
I was a cast member.
I got there. So they had a cast member that obviously is dressed up as Belle, and she tells some storybooks.
She is Belle.
Oh, sorry. They have Belle come in and tell some stories. But they also have some cool audio animatronics and stuff in there that kind of liven up the experience. It's pretty cool. They have some cool technology in there.
Paris is the one that has the new Beauty and the Beast ride that has some of the sweetest animatronics I've ever seen in my life, just through video.
So
the trackless animatronic, I think, is what it is, and
so
those are some sweet animatronics.
So if you've done Enchanted Tales with Belle, it kind of sounds like the rest of this middle section of Fantasyland was meant to be kind of the same experience, but with like other princesses. Cool. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. The reaction that parents had when they announced this was kind of mixed. Like, it seemed like there was going to be a lot for the kids that enjoyed princesses, but like if you're more into the rides rather than meet and greets, then there wasn't going to be a lot to do in Fantasyland.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think meet and greets are mixed opinions anyway. I think it's a hot topic right now.
Right now, but this was obviously way before that, but right now it's even worse. So
not even worse, but I think it's a hot topic right now because of the COVID restrictions.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's even so
even better.
Controversial right now. So
it's not controversial in my eyes.
Well,
anyways, different topic, different day.
So another Disney franchise that was really popular at this time was like the Tinkerbell and Pixie Hollow, all that. So they had a Pixie Hollow section of the park that was going to be planned out, where it was going to be kind of like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids type thing, where like you would walk in and there'd be like massive, plants to kind of make you feel like you've been shrunk down to the size of a fairy.
Yeah.
But again, there were no rides in this area. It was more meet and greets. So lots of meet and greets, lots of experiences with characters, but like not a lot of rides. So parents, like I said, had mixed reaction. They according to some of the concept art, it looked like Pixie Hollow was going to replace some of Mickey's Toontown Fair. So some people were kind of, beat up about that. Some people really enjoyed Mickey's Toontown. They said they were going to double the Dumbos, which they ended up doing. And
so fun fact about Toontown, I've actually been there. That is one thing I have done for sure.
Okay, so if you did Toontown, then you probably didn't do Enchanted Tales with Belle. Unless, I don't know if there was some period when those lapped over, but I doubt it. Yeah. Since this kind of all this announcement kind of happened at the same time, so.
I don't know.
So eventually, all of Pixie Hollow was canceled, and this whole area gets turned into Storybook Circus. But in late 2010, someone by the name of Tom Staggs took over the new Fantasyland project. And he had heard some of these, complaints from parents that they were saying that there weren't going to be enough rides, that some kids wouldn't enjoy it if they didn't, want to spend time with princesses. So Tom Staggs was a father of 3 boys himself. So the story goes that when he showed plans of the project to his boys, they would tell Dad that the area didn't have enough that they wanted to do. So at that point, the Little Mermaid ride and the Beauty and the Beast areas were already well underway, but they really hadn't started on this middle section yet. So that's when the idea for the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train kind of got pulled back off the shelf back at the Imagineering's office. So this time they did get approval to build the attraction. So after that, plans were immediately set into motion, and the ride was officially announced on January 18th, 2011. And this was the announcement that Disney sent out. As with any project of this scale, we've also continued to look for additional ways to surprise and delight our guests, and we think you'll be pleased. One opportunity we're especially excited about is the chance to tell Snow White's story in a fresh new way. The Seven Dwarfs Mine Train will take you on a rollicking musical ride into the mine where a million diamonds shine. The coaster will feature a first-of-its-kind ride system with a train of ride vehicles that swing back and forth as they whisk along the track. The journey will be accompanied by music from the classic Disney film and animated figures of Snow White and the dwarves. So, with a new attraction based around Snow White, they eventually decided to demolish the old Snow White, what was it called? Snow White Scary Adventures Dark Ride, which that is still at Disneyland, but at Disney World they decided to demolish that. They didn't want 2 Snow White rides like right in Fantasyland together. So they got rid of that, and that ended up becoming the Princess Fairy Tale Hall, which is where you can do character meet and greets. So they kind of switched them. They put the character meet and greets over there for people that wanted them, and now they're going to be doing the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train in the Seven Dwarfs.
Negotiation.
Right. I think that was a wise call, honestly. So, since Pooh's playful spot needed to be removed for the coaster, his tree was relocated across the path and is now the new entry for the Winnie the Pooh ride.
Parker loves that place, like the queue to go into Winnie the Pooh. I think he likes the queue more than he liked the ride. So, when we went last time,
yeah, he does. They have a lot to do in that queue, so I think
it's a fun little queue for sure.
So just to kind of show you, this is the difference between the rendering. So you can see a lot of this ended up staying the same, like the Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. But you can see Pixie Hollow was completely overtaken, and now that whole section is Storybook Circus. And obviously this middle section of Fantasyland is completely changed, with the roller coaster now being the center of the new expansion. So, and we'll talk more about this rendering later on, but this rendering is really interesting. It doesn't really match what they ended up doing, which makes me curious if there were other plans. So we'll get into that a little bit. So construction began soon afterward. Though much of the immediate construction was for demolition and theming, they didn't start putting track down for 18 months after the announcement. So they finally started putting coaster track down in September of 2012. During construction, one of the major struggles they were having was how to do the audio animatronics. So they had, debated about doing typical, animatronics for the middle portion of the ride with hard plastic shells. But the dwarfs' faces, just they couldn't quite get them to match the animation style of that era back in the 30s. They said their facial expressions were just so exaggerated and stretched and squashed that they couldn't get it right, and they wanted to make sure they could do it right. So
as Disney always does.
Yep, Disney has to make it perfect, right? So the struggle is eventually what led to the development of rear projection mapping in animatronics. I have no idea if you're familiar with what that is or how that works.
Probably, if you explain it, but...
Yeah, so the technology was used previously in Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin and parts of Haunted Mansion, but those had been built 15 years previous to, well, Haunted Mansion built way before that, but they hadn't done any technology like this in nearly 15 years. So the technology to do what they want to do had grown tremendously since then. So basically the way the technology works is Walt Disney Animation Studios worked hand in hand with Imagineering. So animation studios would come in and, basically draw all the different, facial expressions and animations that they wanted the animatronics to do. And then Imagineering maps that out into a projector that's inside the animatronic's head and projects it out onto the face of the animatronic from the inside.
Cool way to do things, honestly.
Yeah, so you can see from beginning to end. So they just do preliminary sketches of Dopey here, build that into a 3D animation, and then color it, and then that's the finished product that we get on the ride. So
and it's so well done that honestly, like, I would have never thought it was just a projection because it just looks so real. It's
so well done, and I remember. So I didn't read up on the ride a whole lot before I rode it. And I remember when I rode the ride for the first time, you come in through that middle section of where it's basically a dark ride. And I remember just looking at the animatronics. I was like, how did they do that? Like, I had never seen anything. Yeah. Like I said, you get a little bit of it in Haunted Mansion and Buzz Lightyear, but nothing to the extent of what they did here. And it was incredible. So this technology has now become the gold standard for their animatronics. So you now see the technology on Frozen Ever After's animatronics, and I had Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway uses the technology. So, but this was kind of where that technology started to become mainstream again.
So that's cool.
So another thing I found out that, and this is typical Disney. If you look at the mine carts on the actual trains, each one of them is completely unique. They made them to look like they were carved by hand, even though they were completely manufactured. They did the same thing for Cosmic Rewind. If you look at the trains, each of them have different, like they look like they've been shot and in battle and stuff, and each of them are completely unique. And so, typical Disney. Typical Disney. So, as with many rides on Disney property, the coaster was designed with high capacity in mind. Makes sense. Right. So, with 2 lift hills and several sets of brakes, the attraction has a theoretical capacity of 1,500 riders per hour when all 5 trains are running. So it has 5 trains, which is really impressive.
Usually I've seen 2 or 3 going.
And there might be more than you realize just because you can't see the whole ride from one spot. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term block zones. I don't know if you've heard me talk about that.
No, but it sounds pretty self-explanatory. So.
Basically, if any of you are not familiar with block zones, the way it works is coasters have to have block zones in order to prevent coaster trains from colliding with each other. And block zones can be a set of brakes or it can be a lift hill. Those are the 2 most common ways a block zone is built into a track. So if you think about the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, there's 2 lift hills. At the end of the ride, there's also 2 sets of brakes. So between that and the station, you've got 5 block zones. So that it makes it easier for them to crank out a bunch of trains. There's probably another block zone at the beginning of the dark ride portion. They're probably able to put 1 train on the lift hill in the dark ride portion and 1 at the bottom of the hill. So they've really got a lot of options, and that's how they're able to run over 20 trains on Space Mountain is because of how many block zones that ride has. So
crazy.
They do that, and so Yeah, it's how they get so many trains, so many people going through these Disney rides, and it's well done.
I mean, it's what's needed. I mean,
yeah,
Disney has become.
Otherwise, if you're only running 3 trains, now you're looking at 160-minute wait for the ride instead of 80 minutes.
That's true. Yeah.
So, ride officially opened to the public on May 28th, 2014, and continues to operate to this day. So the ride experience is as follows. After reaching the loading area, guests board mine cars in rows of 2, 4 riders per car, 5 cars per train. The attraction begins with guests leaving the loading area straight into a small drop to the right as the ride moves outdoors, taking a few turns before going up the attraction's first 31-foot lift hill. The train then begins its descent and winds its way through the forest and around the mine through several bank turns. Next, the train slows down as guests enter the Seven Dwarfs Mine. Here, the dwarves can be seen singing, whistling, and digging for jewels. Continuing on, guests hear the 5 o'clock alarm go off, and Doc begins to sing Hi-Ho. After Doc's opening yodel, the other dwarfs join in song as the train begins to ascend the 41-foot lift hill. Along the left-hand wall of the mine, guests can see silhouettes of the dwarfs as they head home from work. The train heads back outside as it crests the lift hill and hits a small pre-drop before diving down the largest drop of the attraction, hitting a top speed of 34 miles per hour. After an upward helix to the right, the track crosses over itself on a bridge, then turns left into an S-curve. After one final turn to the left, the train hits the final brakes, and riders pass the dwarf's cottage, where the dwarfs can be seen performing the yodel song with Snow White. As the group celebrates inside the cottage, the evil queen can be seen outside the front door cackling as she is about to give Snow White a poison apple. So the attraction was met with great reception among families and kids. The height requirement is only 38 inches, which only the Barnstormer has a lower height limit among all the coasters at Disney. Right. So it gave young kids another coaster experience in between Barnstormer and Big Thunder Mountain. So nowadays you also have Slinky Dog Dash at 38 inches, but that obviously came later.
Well, and it's in a completely different park.
Yeah, exactly.
So unless you have a park hopper, you really can, only
if you were at Magic Kingdom and you had a kid that was, 38 inches, all they could ride that day as far as coasters were concerned was Barnstormer. So it was popular, and coaster's been wildly successful, and it's not uncommon to see the ride have the longest line in the park. So one fun fact I did learn about the ride, the animatronics from the original Snow White attraction. So if we look at, so there's the cottage scene that's at the end.
Right.
The original Grumpy, Doc, Bashful, Sleepy, and Happy were all taken from the Snow White Scary Adventures ride and put into the cottage scene here. So kind of in remembrance of the old ride that used to be there.
So cool.
They did rebuild the Snow White animatronic and the Dopey standing on Sneezy's shoulders, that animatronic. But so one thing that is interesting, I always thought when I was coming into that, I've always had this thought of well, why do these animatronics just look like animatronics from 30 years ago, where the animatronics in the mine just look incredible? Well, that's because it was purposely done. They used the old animatronics and they built these new ones to look like the old ones from the old ride.
Yeah, when it makes sense for it not to look...
Yeah, it would look weird if they didn't do it that way. So they also used, when you're going up the first lift hill, if you look up, there's 2 vulture animatronics above you. Those also are from the original ride. So you can see this picture here.
I don't think I've ever noticed that. So now I'm going to definitely pay attention next time.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Nice little tribute to the original Snow White attraction that used to be at the park. And let's see... The ride was the first on Disney property to offer on-ride video to guests. I don't know if you've seen that. You have? Yeah. Okay, good. So the technology behind it is actually pretty interesting. So it automatically sends videos to guests' My Disney Experience account using RFID from the Magic Band that you're wearing, which is, I have no idea how they do that. It's really impressive. But there's only that ride and Tower of Terror, the only 2 rides on property that offer that at this point. So... And it's really fun to have just little snippets. So
Cosmic Rewind will do something like that. So
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Cosmic Rewind has. So, due to the success of the attraction, Disney would also end up adding the attraction to Disneyland Shanghai in 2016. Though the attractions have slight differences in theming, the layouts are identical. So it's exactly the same.
That's cool.
The only difference is all the songs are in Mandarin. Which makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
So, now, I did mention we were going to talk about some potential... that it was possible that there had been some changes made to the ride throughout the process. So if we go back to this rendering, so you'll notice a couple things I noticed when I was looking at this rendering. First of all, the entrance goes directly into a mine. So you would go like straight in onto an underground section of the queue. Whereas the queue nowadays is mostly outdoors and then like half indoors. Also, you can see people walking right up to the cottage, which you can't do. So I don't know if that was going to be like a meet and greet spot and then they changed it. I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, that is interesting. There really isn't a spot to meet and greet Snow White.
Unless they do it at the Princess Fairy Tale Hall, because they interchange the princesses that are there.
Not often, because she's not a very popular princess, which makes me sad because she's like my favorite.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's interesting looking at this rendering is like the coaster comes in and out of the mountain like several times.
Yeah.
And
which
so
you don't see that.
Yeah, so when I was doing research for this, I saw multiple people talking about that there had been several, and this is just rumor and well, I don't know if it's hearsay, but it's been like, I guess Imagineers have said that Disney hasn't confirmed this, but Imagineers have said that there had been budget cuts and that the coaster it was going to be longer and then it got shrunk down a couple times. So someone posted these online, these layouts of this is the original layout proposed and then this is what we ended up with.
Huh.
So I'll post these on Instagram and Twitter so those of you that are listening can follow along. The green track I'm going to be talking about is what was originally proposed, and then the blue one was kind of like the middle option, and then the orange track is what we have today and what we ended up with. So this green track is interesting because these darker parts of the track, that's meant to be where it would be indoors.
Okay.
So I'm guessing this kind of looks like a lift hill to me, this straight section at the beginning. So it looks like the first lift hill would be indoors. And then you'd come out and do this outdoor section. And then you'll notice this whole, like this weaving section was probably going to be the really long section of like them singing the song and the animatronics and all that. What it looks like to me is there's this section in the middle that's a really long straight track. I'm guessing you would wind around and then you'd go up a lift hill and then there'd be a second scene up top. So there'd be like one scene down below, you'd go up a lift hill and then there'd be another show scene up top and then you'd come out the drop. And then there's one more section that's in the dark or indoors here. I'm guessing that probably wasn't a slow section. I'm guessing that was a part where you probably sped through an indoor section, which sounds cool. And that kind of matches what you see in the rendering here.
This is all Nathan's thought
This is just all my process, because all we have is the things I know is these are the layouts, and I know that the dark parts are the parts that were indoors.
Right. So
other than that,
Nathan's knowledge. This isn't anything.
Other than that, this is just my theory based on what I see from these layouts. So then this second one, really the only differences here is it looks like the first lift hill was indoors, as the same with that one. And then maybe a little bit longer of a middle section, but not crazy different from what we already have. And then this ending section looks almost exactly the same to what we have nowadays. Mm-hmm. So, and then obviously this is what we have now with just the one indoor section in the middle of the ride. So it was interesting to look at, to kind of see the different potential, things we could have had with this coaster. If there could have been other, ideas that had been bounced around in Imagineering that they just never got to, or that there were budget cuts and so they had to make changes, which, I mean, knowing Disney and amusement park, budget cuts are common, especially if a project ends up being more expensive than you think. Then it may not even be budget cuts. It may just be it's more expensive than you thought. So in order to fit in with the budget,
the animatronics, though, I mean that was a pretty new concept for them.
So who knows? They may have spent all their all their budget on the animatronics, and so they had to focus on that rather than the coaster and kind of shrink some of the actual ride experience to make this possible.
Makes sense.
So to this day, the attraction may not be as thrilling as Expedition Everest or Rock and Roller Coaster, but it continues to draw in large crowds. The coaster is able to provide a fun experience for adults while introducing younger riders to the world of roller coasters. So, and I think that's pretty much, the history of Seven Dwarfs. Not as much history behind it as, some of the other things we've talked about the past couple weeks. Obviously, it's a newer coaster, so not a ton of history behind it, but it is interesting to see all these different types of rocking back and forth that came before it. I was interested to see in Disney's original announcement that they specifically said that this is like a first of its type ride vehicle, which, because Orphan Rocker never opened to the public, is technically true. So I have no idea if Disney was inspired by Orphan Rocker or if any of them even knew about it, because it was in Australia. And like I said, it never opened. They did. I mean, they probably did. They probably keep up to date on stuff. But I just thought it was interesting. Because that ride never opened, they could technically claim it was a first of its kind. So, because all the other attractions that had swinging cars had been from, hanging below the track rather than being on top of the track. So yeah, it was interesting. So do you have any questions, further comments, or any last thoughts about Seven Dwarfs Mine Train?
I mean, I guess for the podcast in general, this is, definitely, we're still learning. So if you guys have any questions or comments, definitely give us a shout. You can either message us or comment on our Instagram or Twitter page. We love feedback and we love questions and, even ideas on what we can do in the future, as far as roller coasters, like requests. Obviously Disney has a special place in my heart. You've mentioned it, I've mentioned it. So, anyways, if you have questions about even Disney World, you can ask me too. So
yeah, for sure, and we'll definitely touch on some of the, some of these other Disney coasters as we go along.
Yes, please.
So, I don't know when the next time we'll get back to Disney. I'll try to leave Magic Kingdom alone for a while, but we may go to Hollywood Studios or maybe touch on Everest. I don't know. We'll see. But for now, I think I'm thinking about what to do next time. I think I might do something from Kennywood, do something from Haley's home park. So
that would be fun.
Do you know how old you were the first time you went to Kennywood?
Oh gosh.
Do you even remember the first time you went?
I don't. I mean, it's been there forever.
Yeah.
I know that our family didn't like Kennywood as much because we were, there's another amusement park called Idlewild and Soak Zone, and my family liked going there better because it was more geared towards kids.
Yeah, and families. Yeah.
So
whereas Kennywood has a lot of thrill rides.
I want to say the first time I went to Kennywood was probably, I was either 10 to 12, maybe. Okay. Maybe. So it's so hard to tell though because I've been there quite a bit. So
yeah, for sure. So, well, yeah, we'll definitely do something about Kennywood next time. I haven't decided which coaster, but we'll do something Kennywood for the next episode. So that'll be fun. You'll be able to give your input not only as a GP but as that being your home park. So yeah, that'd be fun. So
for sure, that would be fun.
Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Airtime Traveler. We've really enjoyed, recording these past few episodes for you, and we're excited to head off to Kings Dominion and Kings Island in the next few weeks to experience some more coasters and get some more content for the podcast. And so go ahead and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's just at Airtime Traveler. You can see the pictures of the different things we've talked about today over there. And you can also, we're talking about other things. We're asking polls. We may, retweet some other news or exciting things that we're seeing in the industry. So lots to see over there. And most importantly, you can keep up to date on the podcast and see new episodes that come out. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow us so that you keep up to date on any new episodes that we have come out. And I think that's all we have for this episode, unless you have anything else to add.
I think I'm good.
Alrighty. Well, be sure to go and ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and check out all the things you learned today. So it'll be fun to ride it in December now that, we kind of know all these new things about the ride. So that'll be fun.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.